Hello.
So we are back with another interview for our series, Taylor Swift But Make It Horror, where we find inspiration from Taylor Swift songs and turn them into horror stories. And this
Yeah,
week,
we do.
or this month, I should say, uh, it is Ashton's, and she did Welcome to New York, and it is called
It's been waiting for you.
Ashton's just like slaying this week with her hair and her makeup and everything. So
Yeah,
let's take a moment to appreciate.
thank you.
So this interview is going to contain spoilers. So if you are interested in listening to that story first, which I recommend, I would click off of this. I will put the link to Ashton's story in the description below, and you can go listen to that and then come back.
Yes. And also to piggyback on that, this story does contain dark themes, specifically violence towards children. And if that is something that you cannot stand, I understand that you might not want to watch this and this is not for you. The creature in the story is a real Filipino folklore legend. And this is not something I came up with. This is something in real life or in cryptoology studies. I don't know.
And to add to that of the warnings of what people might be sensitive to, there is also uh, loss of pregnancy. So,
Yes.
did you want to start off by saying what this story is about?
So it's been waiting for you. If you are a Taylor Swift fan, I think you know the lyrics to the song. It's kind of like a very poppy song that starts off her 1989 album. This one's really not about romance at all. So I don't really know why this song in particular just like stood out to me, probably because the song after a little while kind of started to like irritate me. And I was just like, this is a horror song. I'm going to prove it. So this is kind of an homage to basically like that feeling of the song about how in New York you can really be whoever you want to be and how there are like so many like things going on at all times and you can really just make whatever name you want to for yourself. So I took that and had the same exact sentiment except it was from a horror angle. And this is a story about a man who had a very troubled past at home. And he goes to New York City to try to make himself a hero and to feel better about what had happened at home. But that is where he starts to kind of pick up on the fact that he doesn't really want to go home. Like he is finding his place in the city and he is starting to get absorbed into it and he doesn't think that he could ever face home again.
I don't know if it's going to surprise you or not because I know this. I don't know how much you want to go into how like the writing process or how long it took you, but I know that this one was a little bit more like written a little faster than other ones, and I think this one is actually my favorite one so far that you've
Oh,
done.
dang.
So,
Yeah. So I kind of had an idea of where I wanted the story to go, but like you said, this one was rushed. So the whole story that I was going to do initially, I kind of like kept like a little bit of a core of like a man who was from the South that didn't really belong in New York City, and he was there to go demon hunting. And that's about all that I kept from the original story, and I wrote this one in 2 hours.
and remember you saying you hadn't started it yet, but I didn't know it was written entirely in like 2 hours.
Yeah, so for this one, this is gonna be a two-part interview because entirely my fault and not Kayla's, but there is another story that we'll talk about in part 2 where I did start it and I just kept not going back to it. I was just like, "You know what? I just need a fresh start, so I'm just gonna write something that I haven't already, like, set the mood and the tone for and just run with it."
Yeah, that's
So,
fair.
that's what we have. It's been waiting for you.
Sorry, I'm going to be incredibly blown out because like I have to have my notes in front of me. I didn't write them down this time. I don't know if this was like intentional or if this was if I'm completely off with the vibe that you wanted to give off and you're just like, Kayla, what the heck? But I kind of like felt like it, you know, those, I don't think you watched Supernatural, did you?
A
Um,
few episodes, not very many though.
I remember there being like a detective-y type episode, and I guess I could just say detective movies. You don't need to watch Supernatural. It's just that's what popped in my head, because of the weird stuff going on. But it kind of
Yeah.
reminded me of like those detective movies and episodes where you kind of come in as the character's like, okay, so here's what happened. Here's how we got here. I don't,
Yes.
was that the tone you were going for, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was and it wasn't. It was kind of like because I wrote it so quickly, it started off with me being like, okay, he's in New York City. He hates this. But wait, I should probably add backup story to like what's actually happening. So here's all the background stuff, and it's just him having an internal monologue with himself
Mhm.
about what happened, and he's talking to somebody. I don't know who he's talking to, but he's
Yeah.
talking to somebody,
I thought
or
it,
he's writing it down. I don't know.
yeah, I thought it was gonna be like a talking to the police type situation, but it did, like it gave off like this very detective-y kind of thing. I was just like, okay, where's this going? Um, so as you said, he left his wife and kids at home, and it says basically thinking that they were going to be safe there. And I know this, I don't know if you probably knew I was going to point out this line, but it really made me laugh because it's like that decision to answer the call would be what would keep him safe, which as far as I can tell has been a big old pile of rat turd bigger than what you can see on the subways.
Yes.
I was just like very descriptive.
Indeed. I mean, I've only been to New York City twice, but I've heard all of the horror stories of these awful rats. Luckily, I never saw any of them while I was there, but I just assumed that if they're giant rats, they probably also leave giant turds.
So I think you really tapped into the you know what it's like to be in the South for this
Yeah,
guy because I was read it and it was like them Democrats, son of a guns, don't know nothing about what's going on here. It's like not just the government in general, but them Democrats.
them
So
Democrats.
it gave me a real feel for okay, this character is like not from New York, probably.
Yeah, I would say that he is definitely more of a in the camp of I've heard they're bad my whole life, and then he kind of gets out of his small town and he's just like, you know what? You can like who you like, boys and boys and girls.
Taylor Swift references, everyone. So he goes here because there is what's described as like a wild animal that is kind of taken over New York City, and they're looking for people to volunteer to kind of like slay these things. And so they tell him they'll provide housing and $500 a kill. So he leaves his family and comes to New York for that. Did you put a lot of, I know you said that you just sat down, but is this kind of like a piggyback off of like the story that you were going to write, but you just didn't have time to do that one yet, and that's where this idea came from, or did you just come up with this like right on the spot?
Kind of a mixture of both. So, in the story that I was going to write, might explore later, I don't know. He definitely went to New York City to kill monsters, and the initial version, like this one, there were monsters back in his home area, but they were kind of different than the ones that he saw in New York City. Like they had different powers, they were harder to kill in their different ways. Apart from that, this really came from this other series that I do, a podcast called The Night Scholars, where we talk about cryptids, and I really liked the Manananggal, and I thought that it was like just such a terrifying creature. I was like, okay, instead of being like an unspecified demon like it was initially going to be, I really want to hone in on this and the real horror of the Manananggal, which this is where the trigger warning comes in, is the fact that it's a creature that eats fetuses. And
It's
it's just like, how do I
dark.
add this into a story? Because this is the most terrifying creature that I can think of.
Yeah, it's Pretty dark. So, oh, and by the way, I will also, Night Scholars podcast is also on Ashton's channel. As I said, will be linked below. And then also, if you enjoy listening on YouTube or Spotify, I'll link both of them just in case, like, everyone likes to listen different places. I don't know where you else you guys are, but I know you're on YouTube and
Yeah.
Spotify.
We're also on Apple Podcast.
Okay. So I don't know if I could get the link for that, but if I do, I will put it there too.
I have no idea how to get the link, and I'm a part of the podcast, so.
Okay. One of the things that I really liked that you did here was he was outside and he heard like a tick 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 tick. I don't know why I feel like I have to do that when I do it. But it's and I don't know why, but there's just something kind of I think because it doesn't say tick tock like, like a clock would. It's just like there's
Yeah,
something just I don't know, just creepy about it for me. It reminds me of I can't remember what movie it was, but there's like this creature, and that's kind of what it sounded like. Was like this little like tick tick noise, and it was just
yeah,
very unnerving. So even though it's the word and not the actual sound, that sound just kind of like popped into my head.
nice.
Is
Well,
that
that's good though.
is that the sound that the creature supposedly makes like in real life?
Yes, there's technically, like, a few different noises that it can make, and I was kind of freaking out because I was looking over my notes for the Night Scholars episode on it, and I had, like, walk, walk, tack, tack, and something else that was weird. I was just like, "No, I know tick, tick is somewhere, like, this has to be here because I talk about the clock noises and, like, the beat of the heart, and I don't wanna go with tack, tack.
Tac tac.
Tack,
Yeah, I
tack."
know you texted me and you're like, it might be tac tac. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna mess that up. Uh,
But
but
we were
those
good.
were the other things that you just mentioned, like the clock and the heart. Those are also stuff I have highlighted because I really liked a lot of. I don't know. I just feel like you did a really good job at making this story creepy, and I know it's more surprising that it was done in like 2 hours. So, uh, I don't know if that makes you feel good or bad, but like,
No, it
did
makes me
really
feel good.
okay. I'm
I'm
just
very shocked at myself that I got it done as quickly as I did.
yeah, I don't know how you do that.
So there's gonna be a intro scene, which Andrew was talking about on the phone. He did some recordings for me. And do you are you familiar with the Weeknd's sound catalog at all?
No.
Okay. So he has this song called Dawn FM that's supposed to be like light and airy. And then Jim Carrey comes in and he kinda does this, like, "You have been in the dark for far too long. It is time to accept your fate with open arms. Scared? Don't worry." And then there's, like, a background voice that says, like, "Free yourself." And
Okay.
it's, like, kind of like this whole, like, creepy thing. So I kind of borrowed from that. So how people are going to find this video is I'm gonna have just, like, this 2.5-minute clip where Andrew's doing, like, a recording of, like, a radio announcement, and it's just gonna kind of like symbolize this person like walking down a path, and then there's gonna be two kind of like static TVs, and both of those are links to the respective stories,
Okay.
and so they just like click on it.
That'll be neat. Back to this. The so this is I'm assuming what you were talking about where so Daniel's hearing that not Daniel, sorry. The man is hearing that noise. The son's name is Daniel. Um,
Yes.
he's hearing that noise and then he goes inside and like he thinks that his son has shot his wife. Is
Yes.
that yeah. And there's just kind of like this big like confusion as I imagine one would be if they walked in, a mixture of like confusion and horror if you thought that your son shot your wife. And
Yes.
I think this is the scene that you're talking about where he goes and he just kind of starts like just the shit out of his son.
Yeah.
And he says, I still don't know what would have happened if my wife wouldn't have stopped me. There was just like that was one question that I had is like how injured was she? Because I know that I think she passed out in the car. How did she stop him? Was it just like a mother's like adrenaline or
Yeah, it was kind of like she was like on the verge of being passed out, like unconscious, and she only barely like tell what was happening. I think like Mother Instinct comes in and she's like able to like get her voice projected enough to get him to stop
Okay.
because she's like kind of understanding. It's just kind of like a latent understanding because like she's on the verge of dying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure if, because as I said, I was really tired. I'll have to go back and like listen to the audio when you have that up, which will be up by the time this is posted, because I read this on very limited sleep. He has another son, and I think his name was Joseph. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes. And he was hiding, like I think it was behind some blankets, so he just kind of makes the decision to leave his youngest one there and go to the
he
hospital with
does.
his wife and other son. Before he left to go to the hospital, I really liked this one line. It said, "I called out for Joseph one last time. The tick tick noise of the bird was gone, though I could still hear its haunting call through my own heartbeat in the sound of the damn clock." Like, I don't know. I have a lot of stuff highlighted because I liked a lot of what you did in this one. So here, and I don't know why I already forgot how you've already said it like twice. How do you pronounce it?
Manananggal.
Manananggal?
Yes.
Manananggal. Okay, so it says a Manananggal is a vampire-like being that fell under the category of I'm so terrible.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is Aswang or Aswang.
Okay. I'm sure someone can correct us.
Yes, and they might correct me on the pronunciation of the Manananggal too.
Okay, I'm terrible with pronouncing just about anything in this world, so my bad. So it's known for its appetite for unborn children, ripping out the baby with its long nails and slurping them up, such as what had happened in our home with our unborn child. So this all comes from like real Filipino lore, correct?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
How much research did you do on this? Because I can't remember. You guys haven't done an episode on this yet, right? Or have you? I don't remember.
Yeah, so the episode's not released. It will be released on the 16th of July, 2024, which is our current year.
Thank
Oh
you.
man. You're so
Um,
welcome. Well, just in case like you are my listener tuning in like 2030,
yeah,
this
that's
is
true.
year 2024.
So how much research went into that? Like, because you said that you came up with the idea and then it just happened to fit.
Yeah, so the night before I wrote this, I did a lot of research on the Manananggal for the episode. So the same day that I wrote this story, yesterday, um, I also recorded the episode with Sean and Andrew.
Okay.
So it was very fresh in my head when I wrote the story.
So this is kind of probably going to be really fun for them to listen to. Hi guys. I don't know Sean, but
Hello.
I know Andrew, but hi. I think here it kind of gets comes back around because after they explain what it is, it there kind of states that some people went as far as to claim that the whole thing was just like a CIA hoax, and that also kind of I don't know, there's just something very I don't know what year this particularly is supposed to be set, but there's just it just gives off like those old-timey detective like not present day, even if it is supposed to be present day, and that might be my bad for reading it in that tone. But
No, it's okay. Fun fact, in the 1950s, the CIA did make it look like the Manananggal had attacked in the Philippines. That is why that
okay.
line is in there.
Okay, okay. See, we're learning things.
Yay! You didn't know that when you clicked on this video.
The more you know. It says, I couldn't stand it no more to be around the people I was supposed to protect. To see Daniel who still flinched slightly any time that I made my hand move. And that was just really sad. I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but I know that this is going, since there's going to be two stories, is there going to be more on this character, like, and his family in the next story, or is it just like a completely different?
So the link between the two stories is it is the same man who is kind of like going through like a parallel universe type deal. And so he acts very different in the other story. He does not have the same life circumstances, and it kind of changes the way that he acts, the way that he talks. But the thing that connects them is that neither of them are from New York City, Both of them are from the South, and they both moved there into kind of a shabby apartment, and they both go to this bar called Sal's. And what happens to them is entirely based off of what decisions they made in their life. So there's really no going into detail about the family in the other one because there is no family.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is kind of a really sad conclusion then. Like, it'd be like, oh, my son is scared of me. It's like, I mean, understandably so, but at the same time, it's
Right.
really sad. It says, if I would have known that I'd be facing the same creatures that had destroyed my relationship with my family, I'm not sure I would have come. So he says, you say in here that he's not sure he would have come, but just a little question for the author that's not in here. Do you think that he would have had he known that?
I think that it probably would have inspired him more
Okay.
if he would have known,
Yeah,
because he probably wouldn't have wanted anybody else to suffer the way that his wife had suffered.
that makes sense. Yeah. And then here is where, because like usually you add in like a lot of, which I don't like, you don't have to add in Taylor Swift references. I know a lot of times I like don't, or if I do, they're like maybe just like a name or something. So like I was like, oh, I was like, it took me till I was down here. I was like, oh, there's like references. So we're
Yeah.
like almost done. And there's on the first day in New York, I dropped my bags and took in my new home. Relief flooded me then, a chance to get away, shove my heart in a drawer and focus on something else, anything else for a change. Was this purely like I sometimes I want to know because sometimes I don't know like what was written and then like you go back and kind of like insert little references versus what was written purely to be a reference. So I kind of like to ask that.
Yeah. So since I'm doing two stories based off of Welcome to New York, I really wanted to grab different elements from it. So for this story, I really just wanted to work on the sentiment of why New York City would feel so welcoming to somebody. Whereas the other story, which will be in part two, really kind of looks at those lyrics. Now, the initial story I had in my head, people were literally going to be able to take out their hearts and like put them in drawers, and it was going to be, I don't really know how I was going to do that. I was just like, that is way too much story to put into this when I have very little time. So I'm just not
Would have
going
been
to do
cool
this.
though.
Would have, because like
Yeah.
that's a good line. Like for
Mhm.
horror, it's just like I can rip out my own heart and put it in a drawer, and
Yeah.
I don't.
It's probably a very useful thing too. Like, oh, I'm feeling too much today. Let me just,
Indeed.
even though I think that comes from up here in reality, but we'll ignore that.
Help some hide from the monster or something. I don't know.
So I really liked I'd rather stay here in this city that feels like it's been, let me not read the entire thing so people will go and read it. Um Basically he feels like it's been waiting and he's been surrounded by the sound of the tick tick. I'm not gonna read the whole thing just because I don't want to give it away for everybody, even though they hopefully have already
Yeah.
listened to it. But I really liked that. And then, like, the very, very end, where it's just like, oh, leaving me here, dancing to the beat, ignoring and ignoring over and over the beat of my heart, the tick, 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 the tick, 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 tick. It's a lot of ticks. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Until the old me disappears, or I don't want to butcher it. The creature
Mononondo.
finally makes me as the corpse of my former self and consumes me instead. And I thought that was a really good way to end it. It kind of incorporated the creepy, like, tick tick, and then
Yeah.
also, like, just how it made him feel inside. And I'm just, like, really impressed that you wrote this in 2 hours. Because, like I said, this is my favorite one so far. And, like, the fact that you did it in 2 hours, I'm just like, okay, bitch.
There was less time to think, so I had to try to make it really like short and like condensed. So it's like, okay, like if I'm going to start a theme, I need to make sure to round out this theme and keep it throughout the entire story.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a very good job with this. Like, I don't know, like when I was reading it, I just felt especially when he was like scanning his surrounding outside, like before he saw his wife and everything. I just really felt the creepy atmosphere of it. And I kind of felt like, I know you're not the biggest fan, I've only seen a few episodes, but I just kind of felt like I was in a supernatural episode.
Nice.
And I
I'll
kind
take
of
that
like
as a
that.
compliment. So,
Like, might not
yeah.
be your thing, but for me, it's a compliment.
My boyfriend is not going to like this, but I wrote a horror story that was set in his family's like old home, and this one is very much inspired by a kind of like getaway house that they have. Like I was like picturing that setting too.
Oh,
It's
nice.
just like all of your settings in the woods just kind of like work for me.
Yeah, it's a good setting for a horror story. Since this did kind of incorporate like the whole cryptid thing, do you think that in the future, I don't know how much you want to give away, but I know that sometimes you listen to songs and then you're like, oh, this will make a good horror story. Have you found any others? And you don't have to say which ones they are if you have, that could kind of incorporate like both of your projects with like the cryptids and the Taylor Swift horror.
Not necessarily. Like I know that I want to do a vampire story. Like it's already what I want to do for I think my November release is where I'm going to do this one. So if you like vampires, you have November and maybe another month to look forward to. But I'm not really sure if we're going to, I mean, eventually we'll probably cover a vampire, but there's a lot to cover when it comes to vampires. And we kind of like to do 1 or 2 part episodes as
Mhm.
opposed to however long it would take us to cover vampires because that's a lot. And people know a lot about
Gotcha.
vampires. So,
I don't know if you know. Well, actually, it does tell me. So this was under 3,000 words. How long are your short stories typically? Do you know?
that I have no idea.
Yeah.
They really just vary. I don't have a certain limit that I try to go for. It's just whenever I feel as if the story is satisfied.
Okay. So unless you have anything else to say, I think that this is probably a good spot to end it.
Very short and sweet story. So, or short and not sweet story. So, I expected this to be kind of like a shorter interview. And again, there will be a part 2 where we cover the other one, and we'll probably go into detail since I was very bad and did not give Kayla the intro prior to this of how these stories kind of like end up intertwining slightly. So that will be covered in part 2,
Yeah.
where we talk about untitled Taylor Swift inspired story.
Yeah. Yeah. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Ashton's channel, as I said, will be linked in the description below, along with the Night Scholars podcast. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.